deeper discussion about the idea of different generations of human rights. That the fight, the movement, the debates about human rights are at different stages in different countries. People in America may not demand the same kind of things from their government as we are demanding. People in Pakistan, Myanmar are not demanding the same thing from their government as we are demanding. Every country is at a different stage of its evolution. Depending upon that, their fight and their demand for human rights is very different from each other. It is not the same. First generation of human rights is considered to be civil and political rights. Now, the demand for these rights started way back in 18th, 19th century. Now, 18th, 19th century, just imagine the era. That was an era where most of Europe was under the rule of monarchs. Every country had their own kings, every country had their own monarch that were ruling over randomly without any justification, that did not believe in anyone else, that did not believe in anyone else getting any rights. The individuals did not really have any rights. At that point of time in 18th, 19th century, we had first few movements that started. These are in the category of civil and political rights. These movements took the shape of what you call as a French Revolution, American Revolution. What was the demand of the people? The demand of the people was simple, that we should at least get basic freedoms, such as the freedom of speech and expression. We should at least get the freedom of life. Because till that point of time, the kind of world that they were living in was that the ruler, whoever was the ruler, could randomly take their life. They could randomly decide that, okay, kill this man, cut his hands, cut his legs. This was a very random decision taken by them without anyone questioning their authority, without anyone having the rights to question their authority. So the first generation of human rights was to demand these basic rights: the right to life, freedom of speech and expression, right to security, right to a fair trial. These were civil rights, and then political rights means as simple as right to vote and participate in the government. Because till that point of time, there was nothing called a democracy in most countries. In most European countries, it was a rule of a king, mostly hereditary, people from one single family ruling over the entire country for many, many, many decades, even centuries. And people were not allowed to choose their leaders, people were not allowed to choose or vote in any way whatsoever. That is where the first generation of rights came up. Now, these rights or the fight for these rights was successful in certain countries, like in the US, France, where they had their revolutions. In US, for example, they created something called the Bill of Rights. Now, Bill of Rights is something that you are all familiar with, at least you might have heard of it. The US Bill of Rights is the inspiration for Indian fundamental rights also. Whenever you talk about fundamental rights in India, you would usually see the book will tell you that these have been derived from or taken from the American Bill of Rights. So American Bill of Rights was kind of a first document in this regard where the people were given their civil political rights. Similarly, there was a French declaration very famously called as the rights of man and of the citizen. Again, the rights of man and of the citizens were in the same regard. The first generation of human rights was successful in certain countries, in certain Western countries, US, France, etc., and they were successful in getting some of the rights from the government. These first generation rights were again given to citizens in different countries at different points of time. In US and France in the 18th century itself, the people got their rights. Similarly, there are other countries such as Asian, African countries that became independent much later on. The countries that became independent, for example, after the Second World War, those were the countries which got these rights much, much, much later. These rights, the first generation rights, laid the foundation of what you call as a democratic rule around the world. Democratic rule and the rule of law was set up because these first ever rights were established. This gave confidence to the people that yes, if we raise our voice, something can change. If we demand that we want something new, something can change. That was the beginning, and that was again a game changer for the common people, because for the first time ever, they could take back some power from the people who have been in power for such a long time. Then came the second generation of rights. The second generation of human rights emerged in early 20th century, means at the time of World War. The second generation of rights is in the category of economic, social, and cultural rights. Now, what exactly are these? As the name suggests, economic means your freedom to earn, your freedom to work. Social means social security, healthcare, etc. And then cultural rights means your identity, your language, your culture. Demand to preserve all of these was a second generation. It's simple to imagine in this manner. Imagine there's a very poor guy who does not have any food to eat, who does not have clothes to wear, who does not have anything. If that guy, if you are talk to that guy and ask him, what do you want? If a person has no food to eat, no house to live, no clothes to wear, and you ask him, what do you want? He will not say, I want to go on a world tour, right? That will not be on his demand, right? His first demand would be what? His first demand would be obviously to fulfill the basic amenities, clothes to wear, food to eat, water to drink, and then maybe shelter. That is how the different generations of rights are. That the first demand or the first generation of human rights was just to fulfill the most basic amenities: right to life, right to be seen equally in the eyes of the law, fair treatment, freedom of speech and expression. Once those basic rights were met, that okay, at least we are alive, at least the government is not taking away our life randomly, at least we can speak, we have the freedom of speech and expression, at least this much is sorted. Now let's move on to the second generation. And this is where the second generation of rights is slightly higher than that. And this is where people in the 20th century started demanding right to work and fair wages, right to education, right to healthcare, right to social security, etc. Now, there are different ways to look at right to healthcare, for example. Let me give you a real example. In India, do you have a right to healthcare or not? It's very difficult to define. The government will say that we have so many government hospitals where you will be treated free of cost. So you, why don't you go and get yourself tested there? When you say that I will fall ill and government is not helping me out, the government's argument will be that we have so many government hospitals, go and get yourself tested. But the reality is that we also know the situation of the government hospitals. We also know where they are or in what condition they are. And we also know that if given a chance, if you have an opportunity to go to a private hospital, then no one would actually want to go to a government hospital, right? That is a fact. So right to health is not just about getting a government hospital or not just about getting free healthcare, but it has to be quality healthcare. It has to be at par with private or at par with any other institution where you would have to spend your own money. Similarly, government might say in India that you have right to education, right? We have a right to education act, classes 6 to 14, or sorry, age 6 to 14, up to class 8, you have free education available. But the question is, if given a chance, if money was not really a matter of concern, if money was irrelevant and you were given a chance, in that case, the question is, would you still want to go and study in those schools? Would you still want to go and study in that school where the government is sending you in the name of free education? Most probably you will not. Most probably you will say that no, I don't want to go and study in that school. So this does not augur or this does not justify right to education. Right to education does not mean that you can be educated or doesn't mean that you can be given education anywhere. Right to education should ideally mean quality education. This is where all these things have to be addressed. Government can say that with Manrega, we have given you right to work and fair wages. That is Manrega. But then is it enough? Is unskilled manual labor work that is giving you minimum wages, is that enough? That debate still goes on. In India, we are still at this second generation fight. In India, the fight is still about getting better education. In India, the fight is still about getting social security. In India, we still demand and protest about getting better healthcare, getting fair wages, etc. So, where we are as a society is we are at this stage. That is the second generation of these rights that have still not been given to us completely. At the international stage in 1966, we had something called the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Many other countries have adopted these rights in India also. If you look at our directive principles, the directive principles of the state policy do include many of these. The directive principles of state policy do have a mention of how economic, social, cultural rights, etc., have to be given. In countries such as Scandinavian countries, Denmark, Sweden, etc., also we see the social security programs being run by the government. We see these social security programs providing social, economic backing to people. I'll give you another example. So, if you look at England, UK, they have a system called NHS. It's called a National Health Service. NHS or National Health Service is basically this healthcare system or healthcare framework of US. Oh, sorry, UK, not US, UK. Now, in UK, if you fall ill, and that includes almost everything, but very rarely, very rarely in UK, would you see people opting for a private hospital? Very rarely. Very uber rich people only usually opt for private services. Most of the times, people opt for NHS services only, which are very good, which are free of cost. Now, so as I was saying, in a country like UK, you have this National Health Service, NHS, and how it works is most of the people opt for that only. It obviously has a cost attached to it. There is a compulsory contribution that everyone has to give every year to the NHS, and your money goes into that, and that is how you get healthcare. Similarly, in Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, etc., what we call as a Scandinavian countries, similarly in those countries also, and I told this earlier as well, there's a higher taxation rate as compared to most of the parts of the world. But once you pay that taxes, you know that you are taken care of for most of your basic amenities, education, healthcare, etc. So those countries have gotten that part sorted at least. Third generation of rights is what you call as collective rights or solidarity rights. Now, collective or solidarity rights basically means rights that we deserve collectively as a society, rights that impact each and everyone, not just an individual. Like freedom of speech, right to vote, those are more individual rights. Those affected some individuals, and some individuals were not affected by it. But collective rights or solidarity rights are those which impact everyone in our society. The single biggest example of this is right to a healthy environment. Right to live in peace means right to live without a war. These things impact everyone. Doesn't matter how rich or poor you are. Doesn't matter you are Mukesh Ambani or whoever you are. When you go out of your house, you will go on the same road. You will go on the. You will breathe the same air as other people are breathing. So it doesn't impact you differently as compared to others. These are called collective and solidarity rights. These are called 20th century rights. In countries where the first two generations are sorted, when I say first two generation, I mean first two generation of rights are given. In those countries where first two generations of rights are given, they are sorted, they are fine. In those countries, you see people demanding these rights as well. In India, unfortunately, we do not see these kind of movements or these kind of debates. For example, you would have all heard about Greta Thunberg. Greta Thunberg, this young girl who has been carrying out this movement for saving or conserving the environment. She had spoken at many international platforms, etc. In many parts of the world, you will see these kind of movements taking place. Movement against war or movement for a healthy environment. But in a country such as India or any developing country for that matter, you will not see these kind of movements mostly. And the reason why you do not see these kind of movements is simple, that our most basic necessities, when they are not fulfilled, you don't have a chance to think about something else. Only those people will fight for a healthy environment who have their tummies full, who have their jobs sorted, who have their education sorted. Only then you will fight for the environment, right? You can't fight for the environment, doesn't matter how strongly you feel about it. You can't fight for environment when you know that you don't even have a job, you know you will not get a salary, you know that you do never know your next meal is coming from where. These fights about environment, fight about self-determination, fight against war, these fights are considered to be fights of privileged individual. And in India, that is the mindset, that privileged individual who have everything else sorted can fight for this. And that is why whenever you have this debate about development versus environmental conservation, that is development necessary or environmental conservation necessary, in these kind of debates you have to understand that these debates have to be seen from the context of which country or society you're talking about. Just imagine this: there is an individual who does not have a job. That individual has to earn money and sustain and support his family. Now, to support his family, what does that individual do? The individual has a choice that he can maybe, let's say, cut trees and sell them. Now, even if he knows that cutting down of trees will harm the environment, do you think he would think about that, or he would just say, let me just cut the trees because what I want is money right now to support and sustain my family? Obviously, he will do whatever is required to support and sustain his family. That is what human nature is. This is why most of the developing countries have not reached this stage where they might be demanding these kind of rights, where the society might be demanding third generation rights. These are debates that take place in developed world, but not in developing world. Unfortunately, we have not reached that stage. Maybe after 20, 30, 50 years, we will see in India also these kind of rights becoming more and more prominent. Around the world, there have been some talks about these rights. We have something called African Charter on Human and People's Rights. We have Declaration on Right to Development. But again, these rights have remained quiet, or these rights have not been debated mainly in developing world. They have mainly restricted themselves to developed world right now. Now, in the past few years, it is said that one more generation of rights has emerged. That is called the fourth generation of human rights. Now, please understand this. Some scholars believe there are three generations of human rights only. Some other scholars believe there are four generations of human rights now. Fourth generation has added, that is in the digital world, digital age, what are the rights that you have. Now, what do you have to follow if a question comes? So if the UPSC is asking you a question, if they're asking you a question in a manner where they ask you, what are the three generations of human rights? Then restrict yourself to three generations only. This question has been asked in the past. I'll show you also in just a bit. If the question is describe or evaluate or elaborate on the three generations of human rights, then obviously we'll stick ourselves and we'll stop at three generations. But on the other hand, if the question is explain the different generations of human rights, explain the multiple generation of human rights, something like that, then you can include the fourth generation as well. Okay, then you will include the fourth generation as well. The fourth generation of human rights will come up in that case. So it depends again upon whether or not the UPSC is asking you three generations only, or they have given you a free hand. If they have given you a free hand, then you can include fourth generation also. Now, fourth generation of human rights, it is said, emerged because of the emergence of the digital age. What are these rights? These are rights that have become necessary now because of the surroundings, because of the world that we live in. For example, right to access the internet, right to digital literacy, right to protection from AI and genetic manipulation. These are the rights that you might not have heard about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, but they have become a necessity now. In order to be equal to other people in the world, you need to have exposure to same internet that others have. So right to access internet has become a part of what you call as human rights. Let's take this example. When the government orders internet shutdown, let's say in Kashmir or wherever there are any unlawful activities or there's a disturbance in law and order, the government orders internet shutdown. Whenever internet shutdowns take place, it gives rise to a lot of debate around whether it is justified, is it ethical, is it legal, so on and so forth. Now, the view or the new view that has emerged is that right to access internet is such an integral part of our day-to-day life that if you don't allow someone to access internet, you are taking away the opportunity for their development. The same example we discussed, I think yesterday or day before, when we were discussing about reservation, that if you have access to internet and you're preparing for an examination and someone else preparing for the same examination does not have access to the internet, it is not an even playing field. This is why right to access the internet also has become an essential part, and this is considered as a fourth generation of human rights. This is still evolving. Many countries have not had a lot of debate around it. In Europe, see, usually you will see whenever a new law has to come up or whenever something new has to happen or some new initiative is to be taken, mostly it is Europe that starts it, not even America. You will see most, for example, when cryptocurrency came in, Bitcoins and all these cryptocurrencies started, the first few countries that recognized it, the first few countries that allowed trading, the first few countries that even opened up ATMs for cryptocurrency were actually European countries. So whenever a new technology starts or whenever some new initiative is taken up, you will usually see that the first initiation is usually done from Europe. So Europe a few years back passed something called the General Data Protection Regulation, that is GDPR. It was about protecting your digital rights, means protecting digital information. The same debate that you still have in India and other parts of the world, that is your data protected or not. So this is their model law for data protection. In India, we do have some discussion about data protection right now, but in India, we still do not take data protection that seriously. In India, even if I tell you that, do you know Facebook and Instagram is stealing your data? First reaction that many people would have would be, so what if they're stealing my data? Then what happens? I'm not really concerned about that. So most people you will see are not really concerned about that. Most people are not concerned about how will your data impact or stealing your data, where will data go, etc., so on and so forth. But in other countries, this is a major point of discussion. There are also debates about something called right to be forgotten. This is also part of fourth generation rights. Have you heard about this? If you have, what exactly do you mean by this? Right to be forgotten? Yes, Prabha, tell me.
Hello,
Yeah, please tell me.
am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay, sir. So, right to be forgotten is a right of one's that in which they demand that their data should be after a certain period of time or of a certain use, their data should be deleted and shouldn't be kept permanently.
Mm-hmm.
So, so it is like, for example, I gave authorization for something, Aadhaar ID or something or a phone. So, right to be forgotten One is my data must be deleted, and every record should be deleted within a stipulated time. For example, let's say it's 2 months or 3 months, whatever the policy is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it is.
Okay.
You choose not to share your data with anyone.
Mm-hmm. Okay. 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 Um, Not exactly. What Zainab said is more accurate. What Prabhat said is not that accurate. So basically, so I'll tell you what happened. So this story starts from Spain. About a couple of decades ago, what happened was that there was a guy in Spain who might have taken some bank loan, etc., and could not repay the bank loan. Okay. Now, when he could not repay the bank loan on time, some local media, some local newspaper published an article, like very local media of specific city. So they published this article where they had the names of those people who had defaulted on the loan. So his name also appeared there that he also defaulted on the loan. Now, what happened was that this guy later on repaid the loan. So this guy later on basically repaid the loan and gave the money back. Now, see, if someone repays the money back, that is not news. So no news media will cover that. Do you know 10 people repaid their loan today? Unless you are Vijay Mallya, that news will not be covered. Defaulting on the loan is a news. So when this person repaid the loan, there was obviously no media coverage. Fine. He also forgot about it. Later on, this person applied for a job. And when he applied for a job, the company was doing a background check on him, on his character, and they did a Google search on his name. So when they did a Google search on his name, they saw this article come out in the on the web, where this article says that this person has defaulted on the loan, and thus he was rejected from the job. This is where this case started. The person demanded that I don't want that any search result should come out when someone types my name on Google because I have not given this permission to Google. Google never took my permission that should I show some result if your name comes in or not. Because my name or because I have not given consent to it, how is Google using my name or how is Google showing any search result? That is when this big debate started in Europe again. The debate was right to be forgotten. That I have the right to be forgotten in a manner that no search result should come out when someone types my name because that is my individual, my personal news, and I don't want it to be displayed anywhere. That case went on, and finally, the person won the case, and Google was instructed to delete it. That is called right to be forgotten. In India, also, the judiciary in a few cases has talked about right to be forgotten. Although it is not written in any law in India right now, but yes, there are debates around right to be forgotten in India as well. Right to forgotten is simple that I should be allowed to tell Google that I don't want any search result to come up if someone types my name because I have never given you the consent. That is the idea. Then I've said I believe this became popular during the release of Gangubai. Her kids wanted not to be shown, but the court argued that we need to be alive to the side, something along the line. Yeah, as I said, the origin story goes in Europe. The origin story goes back in Europe. In India, there have been some cases even before the one that you're referring to, even before that, there have been some instances in India also where High Courts and Supreme Court have mentioned this, although there is no specific law about this. Because as I said again, in India, when you have a society where the most basic amenities are not fulfilled, you don't go and fight for something that you think is not relevant right now. Because for people, as I said earlier, for people in India, if you tell them your data is being stolen, they would not really mind, they would not really care about it. As long as their most basic amenities are met, that is fine for them. That is why in India, right now, ideas such as right to be forgotten or debate about right to be forgotten, etc., has not taken place. Maybe, maybe after 10 years, 15, 20 years, when all our other priorities are sorted, maybe we will focus on this and we'll start debating and demanding this also from the government. But at least for now, the right to be forgotten part, has not really been a matter of concern in India. In European country, it has, as you can see here. Finland, in fact, became one of the countries that recognize internet access as a fundamental right. If someone's internet access is blocked in Finland, it is considered as a violation of their fundamental rights, which obviously is not the case in most countries, including in India as well.